I want to show the the opener for this thing because when I seen it, I'm like, I like this. The fact that you mentioned some very notable characters throughout this entire series, and it just told me so much more. So I am going to show where you at. I'm going to show this. Here we go. This is the Kickstarter.
Step into a world where there's no one there but the very best your MC can tell.
Beast mode, nothing.
So some of this that they have, we'll pull it back up in a second. Some of the stuff that they have, that you guys have, are you have a story about John Henry. Now,
Yeah.
talk about that one.
Yeah. Like, my big thing is for Afrofuture goals, and the Josephine Baker story kind of falls in this too. One of my goals is to prop up Black myths, to expand Black myths. I kind of feel that a lot of our stories don't really get second acts. And it just so happens the John Henry story, like the Ballad of John Henry, ends with him dying, right? And I kind of have always had this idea of, well, John Henry is a mythological figure the way that like Thor is a mythological figure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we just bring him back? You know what I mean? And like the idea really is a part of a storyline that we're doing called the All Negro Squad. That's the feature comics book. And John Henry is not the only public domain character in that story. The other public domain character in that story is a character named Ace Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
First appeared in a comic called All Negro Comics in 1947. And the story behind All Negro Comics is that it did not get a second issue. It was a all black creative team. It's very groundbreaking, and there's stuff in there that echoes back to later to the and a couple of other things that we've seen in comics and in like superhero stories. But these guys did it first, and that character is in the public. So I was like, let's just catch up with Ace now. Like, what is he like? What kind of adventures has he been on for like the last 70 years? Like, if we're following the pattern of hero comic books, right? Maybe he had the 1950s period where he was doing like a lot of sci-fi stuff. Maybe by the 60s, they were the just here and the Fantastic Four were appearing in comics. So now he's on the superhero team. He's leading the superhero team. By the 70s, maybe they're doing more socially conscious, like sci-fi stuff. By they're doing the dark and gritty. By the 90s, they're doing the extreme. And so, yeah, I have this story basically where Ace teams up with John Henry and the daughter of Lion, who's actually also in All Negro Comics #1. And they basically have to save President Obama from a zombie epidemic. And inauguration of 2012. So again, Black myths, right? Like I'm like if I'm talking about mythology, I'm going to sit the mythological figure that is Barack Obama, right next to John Henry, and right next to like Ace Harlem, and then I'm gonna have them punch the shit out of zombies. So that's my angle. And again, it's 17 plus, so like I just want to go there. I just want to have a hell of a time and like really present something wild and fun for people.
What I like about the whole idea concept of Ace, because I've heard of Ace Harlem before, being a comic book fan, I've heard of All Negro Comics. And I know that story about that one issue and it never coming out with another issue. And I'm like, at that time, it was amazing that it even came out.
Right, exactly.
But getting canceled after its first issue, we've seen that before. Marvel, the crew.
Yeah,
I ain't never forgave you for that one. Because she was on
absolutely.
Something. But when you say John Henry and Ace Harlem, Josephine Baker, all these other characters, it's giving me League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Oh yeah. There's a little bit of that baked into it. There's a little bit of Watchmen baked into it. I don't know if you remember a movie called OG. It had Pam Grier. And there's a little bit of that baked into it. And we're just playing with the superhero tropes. Now I will say Josephine Baker, she's definitely in her own story, right? I want to expand on that some more because I remember going to everybody here is from the DC area. Is that what I heard earlier?
we're multi state.
Okay.
We're across multi
All
states.
right. Okay. Well, but for those of you who are in the DMV area, there's a museum called the Spy Museum, and I remember going to a field trip in high school to the old Spy Museum, and first discovering that Josephine Baker was part of the French Resistance. And I just kind of like had this moment. I was like, yo, like, why don't we get like a James Bond thing? Why don't we get an Indiana Jones thing? Like, why isn't she like, why are we getting stories where she's punching Nazis? Like, you know what I mean? Like, where is that story at? Literally has been sitting with me for 20 years. And, you know, I finally got a chance to tell at least one of the stories I wanted to tell in this concept of mine. And Jonathan really has knocked it out the park, man. Like, he's been sending me artwork from Instagram, and like I just basically been sitting there like, which one can I show first? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to show the whole thing. So which image am I going to show you first? And you flashed a little bit of it on screen. It's on the Kickstarter bit. But I remember talking to Jonathan about that project, and one thing he agreed on is like, what's the tone of this? And we both said Batman the Animated Series.